Welcome to Organized Chaos, the podcast dedicated to helping seven-figure companies grow to nine-figure ones by turning HR into rocket fuel for their growth. I'm your host, Nahat Kairala, and I've been helping companies do just that for more than a decade. In each episode, I'll dive into HR topics that have a significant impact on your company's growth and leave you with actionable advice that will help your business reach its full potential. Let's dive right in and start organizing all that HR chaos. Hello and welcome back to Organized Chaos. This is episode 15. Today I'm going to talk about a topic that affects many fast-growing companies: how to avoid layoffs while scaling your business. This is particularly relevant given the economic climate we're in, where we've seen numerous companies, especially in the tech sector, going through painful layoff cycles. Startups are usually stuck between a rock and a hard place when they start experiencing success. On one hand, they can expand their operations, but there's a risk of growth flatlining. That can put the company's future in jeopardy. On the other hand, wait too long to scale and the business stagnates, and you potentially lose out on high reward opportunities. As a fast-growing company, the last thing you want is to crash back down to earth mid-flight. Having said that, startups can do a lot of things to protect themselves from layoff scenarios while sustaining their ability to scale. Before we dive in, let me share something interesting from a Harvard Business Review study that really puts things in perspective. And you can find a link to this study in the show notes. So the HBR research shows that layoffs rarely achieve what leadership hopes they will. Yes, layoffs reduce immediate costs, but they often backfire, especially for growing companies. Not only do they harm employee engagement and innovation, but they can actually hurt your profitability in the long run. For startups especially, layoffs can be really devastating because you lose valuable institutional knowledge that's hard to replace. Layoffs also result in bad publicity and an uptick in voluntary turnover. It's like a domino effect. So how do you avoid getting into a situation where layoffs become necessary? Let me walk you through some strategies that I've seen work effectively. First, let's talk about employee compensation. One of the most effective ways to maintain financial flexibility is to implement variable compensation models. Instead of loading up on fixed costs through base salaries alone, consider tying a portion of compensation to measurable goals and company performance. Equity compensation is very powerful here. It allows you to incentivize employees without draining your cash reserves. And if the company takes off, then the upside is enormous. I've seen this work very well in early stage startups where cash might be tight, but the growth potential is significant. The second strategy, and this is crucial, build a culture where hiring is treated as a last resort. If you've been following this podcast, you might remember episode 11 about the broken hiring process and how to fix it. Too often, companies rush to hire without thoroughly evaluating whether they actually need more headcount. I want every hiring manager listening to this to ask themselves, have we optimized our current processes? Could we solve this problem through automation or process improvement instead of hiring? Make a point to evaluate the need for new hires and challenge yourselves and your teams to present a compelling business case before you hire more people. If you absolutely need to hire, then look into fractional hires, part-time employees, even the gig economy for project-based freelancers. Avoid long-term hires and full-timers unless you're filling strategic gaps. This leads me to my next point: streamlining operations. Here's a hard truth I've observed over the years. The number one reason companies end up doing layoffs is because they hired people to compensate for broken processes. It's like trying to cure a cancer patient by giving them Tylenol. It might provide temporary relief, but it's not solving the underlying problem. Instead, focus on eliminating redundant work and automating all manual work before adding headcount. That's a prerequisite for building a lean company that is ready to scale when the time is right. Now, when you do hire, focus on hiring for skills and not jobs. What do I mean by that? Look for people with versatile skill sets who can be deployed across different areas of your organization. This creates a flexible workforce that can be redistributed based on business needs. For example, you can hire a couple of full stack developers instead of two front end and two back end developers. Or you could hire a UX designer who also knows front end development instead of hiring two people. During downturns, this flexibility becomes invaluable as you can shift resources to higher ROI areas instead of having to let people go. Employees who know your company will reach optimal productivity much faster than new joiners when you redeploy them to other parts of the organization. Okay, let's talk about expense management. One effective strategy I've seen work well is gating expenses and linking them to business milestones. For example, you might decide not to hire an additional sales rep until you add $1 million in annual recurring revenue. Or you only add a customer implementation specialist when you start onboarding more than 5 customers per month for 6 months in a row. What you're doing here is tying these expenses to specific business achievements. This ensures you're only taking on additional financial burden when you can actually support it. Check out episode 4 to learn more about the do's and don'ts of scaling a startup. How and where you work can also impact your bottom line. It's no secret that I'm an advocate for remote work, but I also understand that it is not for everyone and is not appropriate for some types of businesses. But there's no denying that remote work is a huge cost saver and can give your startup more runway, which can help you avoid disruptive layoffs if you experience a downturn. Employee engagement is another critical factor in avoiding layoffs. Create channels for open communication and involve your team in problem solving. You'd be amazed at how many revenue generating opportunities and cost saving ideas can come from employees when they understand the company's challenges. I've seen cases where employee suggestions have saved companies millions of dollars, eliminating the need for workforce reductions. Transparency about your company's financial health is a must, especially in the startup world. I know some leaders worry about sharing too much financial information, but in my experience, employees generally rise to the occasion when they understand what's happening and why. They become partners in finding solutions rather than just being passive observers. Obviously, you need the right people at your company for this to work. Financial transparency on its own is not enough, though. Your company also needs to practice financial discipline. Depending on your funding sources, it might be prudent to increase your focus on profitability instead of hypergrowth if it means sustainable growth. I always recommend maintaining a lean budget and to avoid overhiring, especially if you're a VC funded company, because startups tend to spike their hiring after successful funding rounds and become trigger happy with headcount. A key financial metric to keep an eye on is your monthly burn rate. Make sure that your burn rate is not outpacing your revenue growth, or you'll come face to face with layoffs very soon. Avoiding layoffs isn't just about the now, but also involves building resilience for the future. Invest in automation and upskilling programs. This isn't just about reducing costs, it's about future proofing your workforce. The companies that weather economic storms best are usually those that have invested in both their technology and their people. Finally, don't underestimate the power of scenario planning. Develop contingency plans for different economic scenarios. If you're self-funded, identify clear triggers and levers that you can pull, which will impact each scenario. This helps you make proactive rather than reactive decisions about your workforce. Remember, layoffs aren't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. They affect real people and can have lasting impacts on your company's culture and ability to innovate. By implementing these strategies early, you can build a more resilient organization that can scale sustainably without resorting to layoffs. That's all for this episode. In the next episode, I'll discuss how startups can leverage AI for their HR functions. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a review wherever you get your podcasts. This will help me spread the word about organized chaos and keep the show going. If you have any questions or topics you'd like to suggest for the show, please send me an email to hello@organizedchaos.fyi. For more content and resources, make sure to check out the website at organizedchaos.fyi. See you on the next one.